I think you're facing what some call your biggest challenge yet, 100 to 300,000 people on the streets.
What's 300,000?
When I look at it as just that event alone, and you look at the protests, it doesn't make sense. People are frustrated by the economic situation in Serbia. Some people call it corruption.
There is a mutiny and unrest organized by wealthy, false elite that are not happy because they are not in power. There are no poor people in the streets, not at all.
I think there is corruption in Serbia. I think Serbia, after the war it's been through, it's hard not to have.
I think there is corruption all over the world. There has been huge expectations raised among those people that were protesting. They believe that it was an ongoing revolution. It's just a matter of time when we're going to overthrow that bastard, which is myself.
But do you think this is their true intention?
Come on, and that's how it usually works.
Yugoslavia seemed like I call it an experiment. But then what happened in the 90s was just sad. And I think atrocities were committed on all sides. Why do you think that experiment failed?
That created a terrible precedent, which led us to many other wars, including this war in Ukraine.
Just finished a discussion with President Vучić of Serbia. Most people don't know that Serbia is not only seen as a bridge between Russia, China, the US, and Serbia has good relationships with all these countries. But Serbia has also been through decades of war. NATO's first military intervention ever was in this region in 1995 and again in 1999. And of course, you've seen the news. Tens of thousands, if not more, are flooding the streets. It's been going on for many, many months here in Serbia. I sat down with the president to discuss everything that I just mentioned, and I think we've gone through a lot of points. It was a great discussion, and I hope you enjoy it. You had to take Serbia from where it was during the war and what it's been through for so many years, even decades, and then through alliances, strategic alliances, get it to slowly become wealthier as a nation.
Which was not easy at all.
It's still in progress.
Today, we hoped at least that this year it was going to be the fastest growing economy in Europe. Now with these protests that are actually creating a lot of hurdles to us, we still believe that we can be one out of three best performed countries in Europe this year.
Yeah, one of the heartbreaking things I've seen, obviously the history is heartbreaking within itself. And this is recent history, not just the Balkan Wars, even up to the 90s and 2000s. But the fact that all former Yugoslav countries, except for Slovenia, are in the top 10 poorest countries in Europe. That's sad to see, considering what Yugoslavia was back in the 80s.
Yes, Yugoslavia was very much this or another way you might interpret it, but it was a very progressive country comparing to neighboring country in particular. But I can tell you, last 7, 8, 9, 10 years, we made a huge progress, and we are closing the gap between countries that made a significant progress 20 or 15 years ago. And now you have the same level of average salaries in Serbia as you have it in Bulgaria, let's say. And they got 70 or 80 billion in grants from European Union, and we got 2 billion. And these are good news. And speaking about growth rate, as I said, we believe that this year we were going to be number 1 fastest growing economy. Last year we were number 2. Only Malta, as a tiny country,
Malta?
yes, had a bigger growth rate last year than Serbia.
That's impressive. Congratulations.
Yeah, and this year still we believe that we can be 1 out of 3, apart from all the bumps on the roads we are facing with.
The country deserves, it just needs it after everything it's been through.
Yeah, you're right.
Many people don't know that the first military campaign by NATO was here in Serbia. Was actually in Bosnia against the Bosnian Serbs. That was the first one. The second one, I think, was Kosovo, Serbia during the Kosovo War.
Yes, but in Bosnia it was a different case. But what was totally done in a totally illegal way was that we call it aggression against Serbia that was launched by NATO in 1999 without any permission of UN Security Council, without any real decision. It was a unilateral decision made by NATO, not by United Nations, not by anyone else. 19 countries participated in that. They attacked one small country that didn't have any chances but to defend itself. But the main problem was actually the following. They wanted to do it in order to be helpful to Kosovo Albanians to secede from Serbia. And now, when they start speaking all over the world, well, and Putin, as a smart guy, is using it smartly. Although it's not something that goes in our favor, but he uses for himself, which is regular. And what is that? When people from European Union or the States might say, okay, you, Putin, you do violate territorial integrity of Ukraine, you do nothing in adherence with international public law, with UN Charter and everything else. Putin has an easy answer, which is, but it's not me that did it for the first time in history. It's you. You did it with Serbia. And then they say, they have a very shallow, dare to say, even lousy response to that, which is, well, Kosovo Albanians were facing humanitarian disaster. And then Putin was using the same narrative regarding Donbass, using exactly the same words, humanitarian disaster for Russians and Russian-speaking people in Donbass area. And now, speaking about legal issues, there has been no real justification of that aggression from 1999. And as a matter of fact, it became true in 2008 when so-called Kosovo claimed its own independence, that they were supported from the very first moment by Western countries, by Clinton administration, by all the other European administrations, to do these steps in order to secede from Serbia. Now they are big supporters of values and international public law, saying that no one can change the borders and everything else, but you did it. You changed the borders.
Yeah.
And Kosovo, even according to Resolution 1244, after that Kumanovo agreement, after the war, belonged regularly to Serbian Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, but they didn't care about it. It was their political will to be helpful to them to create all the conditions for the secession from our country.
Yeah, and then that's another thing that people don't know, is that it's called the Kosovo precedent, which President Putin and others have used, but in this case, President Putin used in 2014 and 2022, which we're going to talk about.
Can I add something to
Please,
that?
yeah, of course.
When the war in Ukraine started, I had some discussions with President Macron, with Charles Michel, with Chancellor Scholz. And I told them, now you're going to hear something that you cannot deny from President Putin. They were saying, no, Putin will not use it. And then they had telephone talks with Putin. And after that, I discussed, in a way, the content, what was the atmosphere and everything else with European leaders. And all three of them, Macron, Scholz, and Charles Michel, they said to me that Putin was insisting on Kosovo precedent.
Mm-hmm.
Just for you to know.
He's very, very explicit about it. I had the quotes open. The Western countries recognize the cessation of Kosovo from Serbia as legitimate, but we were not allowed to do the same for Crimea. What is this if not double standards? That was 2014. And then 2022, the leading Western countries once recognized the cessation of Kosovo from Serbia as legitimate. do we not have the same right to recognize Donetsk and Luhansk? So one could look at this as, from a strategic perspective, as something that backfired on NATO.
Exactly, but you cannot say easily that it's not true. You can like him, you can dislike him, you can say whatever you want, but is it something that goes in favor of Serbia? No, no, not at all. Because he is asking to get something what people in the West believe that they have already done here. But is it true that it was illegal way for helping secession here in our country and in our region? Well, it's true.
I've got more questions about this, but I want to start the discussion in what's happening today. I think you're facing what some call your biggest challenge yet. You've been in politics for, I think, 30 years, if not more now. I think you were 23 when you got into
32.
politics. 32. Okay. And I'd say this is one of your bigger challenges yet. 100 to 300,000 people on the streets. It all started with, sorry.
What's 300,000?
Some people are saying 300. I think
some people say 2 million,
2 million, yeah. So that's why I said 100 to 300,000. Anyone could believe whatever number they want. So it all started with a tragic event, but an event that happens around the world. And that was a train station, the canopy of a train station in Novi Sad collapsed. Now, I'll tell you what I understand from it, and please correct if I get anything wrong. From what I understand and kind of, the conclusion that I came to is, train station was built. It was a symbol of pride for Serbia as a partnership with your ally.
No. It was
built. Not built, it's renovated.
It was built actually 60 years ago. Bigger part of that station was renovated recently. The problem is that that canopy was actually in a constructive way. It was not reconstructed. It was not renovated. But there were some additional glass materials that were added to the surface of that canopy that, as they say, as prosecutor's office say, they made a problem. But also it was something that was a legacy of the past because it was not built in a proper way. But our job was anyway to change that and to renovate it and to make everything being secured.
And that was done with a Chinese company. I think Serbia has a very close alliance with China, a historical alliance since the Kosovo, the NATO bombing, because the embassy was bombed. So you guys kind of got closer since. And I think the intentions were good. And for me, when I look at it as just that event alone, and you look at the protests, it doesn't make sense.
Not at all.
But then, so there's two explanations to it. One is, people are frustrated by the economic situation in Serbia. Some people call it corruption.
They never said that. They
haven't been explicit about it. Some have, but it wasn't one of the demands.
They have never said that because if I may just
please
intervene, at least what you have just said, there is a mutiny, an unrest organized by wealthy and mainly rich people. There are no poor people in the streets. Not at all. You didn't see any poor guys in the streets. It's a mutiny of a false elite that are not happy because they are not in power. They don't decide on most important issues. And it's not an economic issues that are problems to anyone in this country, because today you have the biggest salaries ever, the biggest pensions ever, the biggest growth rates ever. We do more highways and railroads and kilometers than ever before, scientific and technological parks as well. No economic problems, no economic issues. And it's not behind that. What I would define it, no doubt, that there are always reasons to be dissatisfied with people in power. First of all, I'm 13 years in power. I've been 13 years in power, which is as a symbol. And that's, of course, too long, and it's long period of time, and many people are fed up, and my vanity is not that big that I cannot admit that I cannot confess that. And apart from the results, there are emotions and that kind of a feeling that people are exhausted. Yeah, that's what is imminent, and that was what's happening here. That's one thing. Then you have to understand that this is a real color revolution, and why I'm saying this. Huge amounts of money were flowing into the country, and they were doing through their media platforms, main media platforms, United Group and all the others, which is, I don't know, CNN branch or whatever. They were doing terrible campaign which was not based on results. They couldn't do anything with results. What we were doing, what we were building, even economic stage of the country was really good. But they were doing criminalization of myself, dehumanization of myself, and then silence about the real results, silence about the reality. And that's what they were doing, of course, raising the issues that were from time to time not existing at all, and from time to time exaggerating on everything. And then boosting it with all NGOs, or almost all NGOs that were paid from outside, with this type of media. And then you have to include a huge interference from outside that, as a matter of fact, wanted to get into the matter many different groups from the society, and they did it successfully. So far, they were not able to topple us down, but these are huge challenges. And to tell you the truth, as you noticed, these people that were protesting, they didn't care at all about victims. And even most of the families of the victims were saying, you don't do that on behalf of ourselves. We don't want to see these kind of riots. That's not that we are asking for. What we ask for is a prosecution office, judges, to deliver their decisions on that. We want justice for our kids, and that's it.
Mm. You know, it's always very difficult for most people, because obviously we don't have access to files that maybe people like yourself or different organizations have access to. So when you look at protests that are happening right now, it's difficult to differentiate between, because like, let's say there is foreign intervention, which we don't know if, I've been critical of US aid, very critical, but it's also hard to know when they intervene. Usually these things come out later. So when you look at protests like this, is it fair to say maybe some people are there, whether they were funded or they were encouraged by foreign organizations, but there's others, whatever percentage, that is, upset by either you being in,
no doubt, majority of the people were not paid by someone from outside, but it doesn't mean, it means almost nothing, because they cannot recognize the influence they are exposed to. When they watch N1, Nova S, and all these media platforms of United Group, what they can see. Do they get money? No, they don't get money. But they really believe that I was a part of that big drug dealing affair of Jovanjica, which I have never known anything about. But they were launching that campaign, pursuing that campaign for 3 years. And after 3 years, just in one day, they were saying, okay, it was not true. It is not really connected with Vучić and his family. But for 3 years, you were persecuting, chasing myself and my family with pure lies. And then you were creating a different sort of emotions. It doesn't mean that you are paid by someone, but these medias are paid by someone from outside as well. And this is what I'm speaking about. And you know that when you organize this, it's not about black swan or something that happens and then all of a sudden everything else happens. No, it works for years. You create a total network and everything else, when you see that you don't have political parties that are able to oppose to the political parties in the government, then you create your own network through different NGOs in every single small city to raise the resistance movements and everything else, in order to use it when it comes proper time. That's how it goes and that's how it works.
I want to go through the demands, but before doing that, Mr. President,
there are no demands anymore.
Because you're saying that you've
no, it's not about us. Yeah, we did it, but they don't mention it even.
But then how would you solve it? Because I think if they're frustrated by corruption in Serbia, I think there is corruption in Serbia. I think Serbia, after the war that's been through, it's hard not to have.
I think there is corruption all over the world, in every single country.
Would you say Serbia, because of what the history it's been through, needs a lot more work than some other countries?
I would say that we need more work to the extent that all the other countries need that work.
I also would say, having gone through what you've achieved in the last 13 years, even prior to that, but mainly the last 10 years or so, is you've been very strategic in putting Serbia's interests first. The way you've dealt with China, the way you've dealt with the US, the way you've even dealt with President Biden. I've seen the way you've communicated with them, but you've also described Serbia's relationship with those countries. So I think the people's frustrations are fair, but then what is the solution in your opinion? So they have a few demands. You said you've fulfilled some of those demands to a certain extent, but then how would you be able to solve those frustrations?
It's not going to be easy because there has been huge expectations raised among those people that were protesting, and they believe that it was an ongoing revolution. It's just a matter of time when we're going to overthrow that bastard, which is myself. And
but they haven't said that explicitly. So, but do you think this is their true intention?
Come on, that's how they do
that's
it.
How it usually works.
And that's how it usually works. And it's because if they started with politics at the beginning, all people would have said, okay, but it's not politics for students. We don't need more politics. We need more justice. We need less corruption and everything else. That was a tactical move at the beginning. Now they cannot hide it. They were saying also that they were anti-violence oriented and everything else. Now they just do many violent actions against everybody who opposes to them. They are not ready to hear different type of opinion. They are not ready to participate in a democratic type of dialogue. We offered them a dialogue, they didn't want it. They asked us to make public all documents and everything else, and we did it. You know that they don't even say that there is something that lacks, but they say, okay, who's going to read it now? There are thousands and thousands of documents because they have never been interested in that. The
documents have all been released publicly?
Yes, okay. Yes. And you can find it easily. Just go to the internet page of the government and prosecutor's office. You'll see it. You can do it a minute after this interview. But it's not about that. Number 4, when they asked money for the university, they have already gotten it, and they confessed that that number 4 request was fulfilled. But they don't speak about requests or demands furthermore, because they will raise number 5, number 6, number 7, whatever. Otherwise, it would be unsuccessful revolution. That's why they need to radicalize themselves, furthermore homogenize, and try to do something. And they started making big mistakes. And it's a different atmosphere today than it was a month ago. A month ago, they were like heroes of the nation. Today, not anymore, at least. Not anymore.
Because they've had their demands fulfilled to a certain extent? Because you said they wanted...
It's because people realized what was going on. At the beginning, I know even I cannot say real friends, but we know each other for quite a while. And they were saying a month and a half ago, 2 months ago to me, you know, Alexander, this is good. This is good, at least. This will shake up everything in the country. You'll have to take care of that. Many things will be changed. These young, good guys, you know what they said to me yesterday evening? hey, we are fed up with all these blockades. We are fed up with this violence that happened in Niš. We are fed up with all these attacks. They want to bring us back to the past, to Bolsheviks, plenums, as they say, or something even from Nazis' time that we remember very, very well here in 1941, and even before that. And people just don't want to jeopardize something that they have already reached. And now they started realizing that our economy is not doing that well, as it was the case before they started these blockades. All the bakers, all the butchers, guys from pastry shops, all of them, they see that they can earn less because people feel themselves insecure and they don't know how to continue with their work. And it's not about scoffing someone, but they actually really made a very bad impact on our economy, because these first 2 months of this year, we had less foreign direct investments than ever in last 7-8 years.
Because of the protests.
Because of the protests. And even S&P and Moody's, in their written report, were saying Serbia has a very good public finances, everything's under control, but what we worry about Serbia is these protests that are bringing insecurity, instability to the country, and that can have a very bad impact on everything and on their economic future as well.
So I want to read out a quote from one of the protesters. Obviously, it's one person among tens of thousands. We just want a country that works. We want institutions that do their jobs properly. We don't care what
And at the same time, they deny all the institutions. You don't know, they did not declare any single gathering in a legal way. Do you know that? If they were doing that in the United States or Great Britain, they would have all been arrested immediately, as you know.
Yeah, I agree. The way you've dealt with it, I think, is from what I've seen comparing to what happened in 2000, I think you've dealt with it the right way. And I hope that continues. If there hasn't been much violence, the arrests have been limited.
We didn't use any violent means. They were even lying about his acoustic weapons.
Which I've seen. I've seen that. The videos show it was used, but it is legal.
No, the video shows that it was not used.
Okay.
It was not used at all. It was not used at all. It was not moved from the place behind People's Assembly of Serbia. Not at all. And we were ready. We invited FBI and FSB. And we said that we are ready. You show just one small evidence that it was used. I'm not the president of Serbia anymore.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I said. And they didn't do it, of course, because it didn't happen.
I was under the impression that you us. Obviously, I don't know for sure. And
I'll tell you why.
There's a video of people like running on the side. You remember that one?
Yeah, I do remember. That's what they organized, like stampede from both sides and for 2 moments. But no one was putting his hands on their ears. If you remember that, if you notice that, it's just another trick made by color revolution masters.
Yeah,
and I'm going to write a book about it, which is going to be a best-selling book in the world, believe it or not.
We're looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Last comment on the protests, because I do want to go back to Serbia's history. There's a lot there to discuss. I know we've talked about what could be done more than what you've already done, but it seems you said you've met most of the demands. The documents, they said they want the documents to be published. You've published the documents. They wanted charges dropped against students that were arrested.
I have already done that. I did that Clemency Act, even against some criminals and criminal professors from Niš, that dean, which I regretted a lot, to tell you the truth, because she's a real criminal, but I did this Clemency Act, and they also said, in a way, everything's fulfilled regarding that demand number 3, if I'm not mistaken.
And then there's suing people who beat up protesters. That was, you've acted on that as well. And of course, increasing the funding for university students.
That's what they publicly accepted.
Accepted that you've done.
Yes.
And then in Novi Sad, they want the resignation of the mayor, Mayor Dudic.
He resigned. Even the prime minister resigned.
Yeah, I'm aware of the prime minister as well. So this is why I look, kind of the final point I want to make.
But you need to know something.
Please.
This is just a type of game they started to play with us and with everybody. They don't really care about it. They want to overthrow me, myself, and that's it. And that's the only reason why they are not finishing their protests.
Your term ends in 2 years. They can vote for whoever they want in the ballot boxes, correct?
But they don't want to vote.
But what's the argument against it?
Because they cannot win any elections. They cannot win any elections. Because if you really believe that there was 300,000, if you really believe that there was 1 million or 1.6 million, which I saw in different type of social networks, posts or whatever, then something's wrong with you. Something's really wrong with you. It shows that you live somewhere out of reality and you don't want to accept the reality and everything else. I do accept reality. I don't lie to myself. It's a huge number of people that is protesting all over Serbia. Huge. And I do respect that. And I know how it goes, and I know that today numbers are much smaller than they used to be 2.5 months ago. Much smaller. Even 2.5 to 3 times smaller.
Mm.
But nobody wants to recognize it because they don't want to live in reality.
Mm.
They don't want to live in reality. It was like a protest tourism, because there are rich people. You had in Niš around 11,000 people coming from Belgrade. Nice walk, nice stroll, good tourism, fantastic Instagram images, great thing. So what?
Mm.
And it was the other way around, many people coming from all over Serbia to Belgrade. Okay. So what?
But for the other students that genuinely are frustrated with different aspects of the Serbian economy, of the systems that allow this economy to function, with those people, you do empathize, and I think you said it earlier, you do empathize with their position and say, so is it fair to say, look, you've already taken steps, you've listened to the demands, you've acted on all of them.
I did understand the message.
Exactly.
And no doubt that everything that was true, everything that was sincere, every single worry that was expressed in an honest way, I had to understand, and I understood. And I know what we need to do, but I'm not going to pretend, and I'm not going to flatter them because I would have better approach to them and they will like me more or hate me less or whatever. No, I'm saying the truth. There is something that I can accept immediately, that I can accept easily, but there are things that are not true at all, which I cannot accept. And I gave to myself that kind of freedom to speak freely, to say what I really think, and I don't care. As you said, I have 1.5 years, less than 2 years anyway, to finish my second tenure, which has to be my last presidential tenure.
What are you doing then?
I still don't know.
You're stepping away from politics for...
Still don't know.
Okay. I want to go, so hopefully things, kind of last comment, protesters, I think you had legitimate demands, and I think those demands have been mostly fulfilled. And I think the next step would be to vote in the ballot boxes in 1.5 years. I do want to talk about Serbia and what was Yugoslavia, because the history is just heartbreaking. And you've been through it all, through both wars. As I said, my heart belongs here. I've spent a long time in Serbia, in Slovenia as well. And maybe let's just give it...
And you met many Serbs in Slovenia as well.
Yeah, I've met many Serbs everywhere.
Serbs are second biggest ethnic group in Slovenia. It's
sad. Honestly, Mr. President, it's just heartbreaking because Yugoslavia seemed like I call it an experiment. Experiment that was very, one of hope, different cultures, different ethnicities, different religions, different languages, all coexisting. But then what happened in the 90s, it was, kind of bottled up for a while and exploded in the 90s, was just sad. And I think atrocities were committed on all sides. And then I think the way the international community dealt with it especially later on in 1999, a lot of questions to be asked. So maybe give us a brief overview of why you think that experiment failed. Why do you think all these different ethnicities could not coexist?
Well, it's a long story. And it started not just after the Second World War. It started much before that. There are different historic roots for, let's say, Croats and Slovenians comparing to all the others. And at the same time, Serbia was the winning country in the First World War. We lost 1/3 of our population, the biggest percentage of people in an entire world. France was number 2, Serbia was number 1, France was number 2. Of course, they are bigger and they lost more people than we did, but we lost 1/3 of our population. And France 11%, if I'm not mistaken, 10.9.
Wow.
And we were like 32.1. And we were, Christopher Clark and all the others would have said, okay, but you caused the First World War, you triggered the First World War, of course. It's
the shooting of Franz Ferdinand. But that's an oversimplification, a misleading one.
At least. Thank you for saying this, Mario. And then we faced Austrian and German anger as a first country. 2 months before it really started, we had to wage our war against them, and we were very successful. We surprised them at the beginning, then they ran us down, overran us, and we wanted to, our army was fleeing to Albania and Greece and then coming back in a very victorious way. But then we liberated Croatia and Slovenia and made a union with those people that actually didn't want to be together with us. But because they lost, they didn't have any kind of better choice before that. But they started doing it. They started doing everything, particularly Croats, in order to secede from Serbs as early as no one imagined. And the assassination of King Alexander in 1934 with French Minister Louis Barthou in Marseille.
Okay.
In Marseille was organized by Italian, British, Bulgarian, and Croatian people and services.
So it goes back a long, long time.
Yes. Then you had the Second World War, in which, just for you to know, Belgrade was the only big city here that was bombarded by Germans. Because at the beginning of the war, only Serbs were against Germans. And that's why they, on April the 6th, 1941, it was a really terrible bombardment, and they destroyed our Air Force, which was a big one and a good one at that time. But there were no other countries or nations in the region apart from Greek guys that were doing anything against Nazis. And all the others were receiving their German tanks and German military vehicles, throwing flowers and everything else, which was not the case in Belgrade, and we paid a huge price.
Yeah. Also, Serbia was one of the countries that were able to expel Germans near the end of the war without much assistance as well.
Yes.
So
we got an assistance of Red Army, but mainly it was our army that was
limited assistance back then.
Yes, and we suffered a lot, particularly west of River Drina, where Croats, Ustaši, Nazis, they killed hundreds of thousands of Serbs, and that was the real genocide, but never accepted by our neighbors. And then, during Tito's communist, partly dictatorship, partly not. It was like a combination of everything, because he was a charismatic, smart guy. He knew how to run the country and how to rule us. But after that, all of a sudden, people were becoming more and more ardent, more and more passionate. to get so-called their statehood back and nationhood back and everything else. And that was the reason that Yugoslavia broke apart, and international community at the beginning, I remember still James Baker's statement, he was at the beginning very strongly against that, but Genscher and all the others from Europe were very much in favor of Croatia and Slovenia, and then Americans accepted that. It all started.
I want to ask you a question. So I was with President Kagame in Rwanda about 3 weeks ago, and the Rwandan genocide was one of the most heartbreaking things to see what humans are capable of, the atrocities they're capable of. So that was an example of where, I'm critical of NATO intervention, but there's also cases where lack of intervention causes, one could argue, Belgian colonialism kind of caused the genocide in the first place, but
or Rwandese colonialism of today.
It's a different kettle of fish that could be debated. But at least one could argue that sometimes foreign intervention is necessary to stop things like what happened in Rwanda, 1 million people in 100 days. And there's other cases where foreign intervention, NATO's intervention, could lead to things like what we're seeing in Ukraine. I want to get your thoughts on NATO's intervention in 1995. There were atrocities being committed by both sides. Pretty horrific time. And NATO intervened, bombed the Serbs in Bosnia, the Bosnian Serbs at the time. What is you're obviously very critical of it at the time, very, very critical. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on NATO's intervention then? And then how would you compare it to NATO's intervention in 1999 in Kosovo?
There is a small difference. I believe that it was very much wrong, that intervention in 1995 as well, because before that things could have been resolved differently, but there is a small difference, which is not that small. At that time, at least you had Bosniak and Croat representatives that were asking NATO to intervene, which means 2/3 of the country's and states' leadership wanted to see that intervention. And in a way, you can legally try to justify it. Mm. But when we speak about 1999, there was only one sovereign and internationally recognized state, which was Serbia, or Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. Without permission of that country, which was a part of the United Nations, you couldn't do anything apart from getting an allowance of UN Security Council, which they didn't get. And what I heard, something new, historically new for this interview. I believe that no one in the international medias have ever seen this or heard this. I spoke to Viktor Orban, and he said to me he became the prime minister in 1999. And he was invited by Americans and some others to give a permission to NATO ground troops and to attack Serbia from the north. He was saying that to me in a very open way, sincere way, and he allowed me to say it publicly. And he refused it. He refused to do so. And the overall idea was, at that time, it was the peak of Western power in the world. And at that time, Clinton was facing internal political challenges, if you remember, with Lewinsky and many other cases as well. And then all of them wanted to show their strength and that they can, in a way, design the world according to their ideas, to their ideology and everything else. And they were eagerly, cravingly trying to make a showcase here in Serbia. And they thought that Serbs were going to surrender after 2 or 3 days, and that was going to be an easy buy. Then that's why they accepted something that was, in a way, a compromising solution regarding everything, although we were defeated and beaten militarily. because they wanted to stop it as soon as possible as well. But it was totally done in a criminal, illegal way, and that created a terrible precedent, which led us to many other wars, including this war in Ukraine.
And one would argue what happened in Georgia as well, South Ossetia and...
Yes, exactly. South Ossetia and Abkhazia and many other things and many other countries and territories.
So when it comes to NATO intervention in Kosovo, I tend to argue with most things that you said. A question that I have, though, is, trying to play devil's advocate. So NATO and the West were also concerned that what happened in 1995, early 90s could happen again in Kosovo. And there were indications of that. Obviously, it's hard to prove any of those things.
It's so difficult for me to agree with you on this, because if that was all about Racak, when they say that it was 52 people or something similar to that killed, those people were fighting our military and our police guys. 52. What is to be compared with something else? And do you know how many Serbs were killed in Bosnia? How many Bosniaks? More than 30,000 Serbs were killed in Bosnia, but no one wanted to see that as well.
I think the West saw so there were atrocities, as I said earlier, committed by all sides during all those wars.
No doubt.
But Serbia was seen in most cases as the aggressor, as countries wanted to declare independence. Not saying this is a good reason, I'm saying kind of that was the perception created.
And I'm not saying that we were angels, and I'm not saying that we didn't do things that we were not ashamed of, but it was the case with all the others as well. And it was not Serbia and it was not Serbs that wanted to secede from Yugoslavia, but all the others.
Another fascinating thing is that despite the bombing by NATO destroying the economy, I think half the infrastructure, half the economic output was destroyed at the time. What I'm seeing now is a shift. I think the support for Trump here, President Trump in Serbia, is more than any other European country, or among the highest?
No doubt. By far the highest. It's around 80%. Why? Because people here were eager to get respect from the United States, a sort of respect, to be heard. Because people here, they live Western values. You see it all in the country, and you know it quite well. And they wanted to get someone in the United States that can understand, that can at least try to hear, try to listen, try to understand Serbian problems, Serbian issues. And all the others in the region were fully against Trump. Only here in Serbia, he was supported by almost 80% of the people. Today, it's even bigger than 80%. Only this urban elite that is protesting, they hate him, which is the same in the United States. All the other people, they like him. And it's emotional, it's irrational. It's not that he did something for us, but people see that we can speak to them. His son was here 3 times, I believe.
I heard your interview.
Yes, but I believe this is a nice message. Then people say, okay, he doesn't hate this country. He likes this country. His son is coming. His people are coming. His people, when we were trying to do that Washington arrangement, all of them, including Grenell, at that time O'Brien, which was NSC boss, and Jared Kushner, they were listening to us for 3 hours in that submarine, naval room, whatever you call it, without windows in White House, for 3 hours. Hey, listening to the small guys from the very small country like Serbia is for 3 hours. And people like to be respected. Is it something that is tangible? Is it something that people really got? No. But it's a sign of respect that people wanted to see. And this is why the situation and why the popularity of the United States is growing. It's because of Donald Trump. And no doubt about it.
Interesting. You've also met President Trump. You've met Putin a lot.
Yes, 20 times I met Putin and tens of telephone conversations. Trump I met, I think, twice or 3 times.
You've met President Xi Jinping as well? You've been very close to
I
China?
met President Xi Jinping, if I'm not mistaken, 12 times.
Wow. And President Zelensky?
President Zelensky, 9 times, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Well, Mr. President, again, as I said, remember earlier in my conversation, you've been very strategic, putting Serbia's interests at heart, from what I've seen. How would you describe, I think Serbia could be an example of how the world could coexist in a multipolar world. What do you recommend for other countries that are in that position? And you've been in that position, you've been a lot of people in the EU have been very critical of your relationship with President Putin. But I think you've been trying to be in the middle as much as possible.
But at the same time, you need to hear this. When we agreed upon the fact that it was not done, that incursion, in adherence with international public law, I didn't see Putin for 3 years. And many of them were speaking to him secretly. And I know at least 2 big leaders that were speaking secretly to him. Because, of course, I still have my friends in Kremlin and in some other countries as well. And I didn't do it for a single time. I'll see him on 9th of May after 3.5 years.
Wow.
Which means that we are very sincere, very honest, and very loyal to what we say. We do what we say, which is not always the fact with the others, just for you to know.
Because Prime Minister Orban and Fico who...
It's not Orban and Fico, it's many others. It was Nehammer as well, it was many others.
But they were open in meeting President Putin. You did not meet him for 3.5 years.
I didn't meet him.
For 2.5 years.
I didn't meet him for 3 years. Last time I met him, it was 2021, 25th of November in Sochi. And after that, after I left his office, I said publicly that I expect very difficult times, including war times. Nobody believed me. Everybody was saying, you're drama queen, you're that and that, which I said, okay, I'm drama queen. That's it. And you base it on what? And I said to them, on nothing. It was just my hunch because
you said that to the EU, sorry?
I said it to the medias and nobody believed me. And I was the only one who was saying that. And they asked me, okay, Putin said something to you. No, he didn't say anything to me.
What?
And that's because he didn't say anything to me. I knew that it was going to happen. Because 18 times before that, we have always been speaking about situation in Ukraine and overall Soviet region. And that was for the first time that he didn't mention it. And when I asked him, because we had a long conversation for 3 hours, he spent 45 seconds explaining it. And I knew that he made a decision. Of course. When you know someone, after 20 times speaking to me, you'll know something about me. And I'll know something about you. And it would be stupid if I'm not able to guess something from our conversation.
And the people that are worried about President Putin looking at, invading, going beyond Ukraine.
I don't believe in that.
I agree. Yeah.
I absolutely don't believe in that. That's the way to fear, to scare all the others and to get them into the camp against Putin.
And do you think that NATO's expansion is the reason, or the main reason? It can't be one reason. It's not as simple as that. But did it play a big role in Putin?
It's a bit of simplification, but that's one of
the reasons.
Yes.
Another one would be strategic territorial gains.
Exactly.
One could argue that as well.
Exactly.
And as we said earlier, what happened in Kosovo was, acted as a precedent for him to make the argument to the rest of the world.
He found a legal argument, which was not a bad one.
And what would you say, so going back to my original question is, how can the world coexist with those leaders?
The world will have to coexist. You see what Trump is doing. And people believe that he doesn't know what he does. I believe that he knows what he does, and which is the following. Okay, I'm going to make some turmoil, some turbulences with Chinese, on tariffs with Canada, Mexico. At the end, he'll make an arrangement with China. He knows that they need them. On the other side, Chinese will need them. But they will carry on with their big race, on AI, on semiconductors, on everything else.
Mm.
He wants to have Russia not in a hostile environment around the United States, because he wants to present himself as the only beacon of democracy, capability in the West, and he wants to, in a way, undermine European Union. He doesn't like Brussels structures at all. And of course, he remembers what was going on after the January the 6th, who was attacking him, who was not. And if you put that personal flavor into everything else, then you can better understand his position. But at the end, he's going to make a deal, trade deal with Chinese, at least, with Russia as well, speaking about trade, economic deals,
Could you see
minerals.
that relation even evolving into a potential alliance between Russia and the US? I'm seeing things move
I
really
cannot
fast.
speak about real alliance, but there would be alliance on some big geopolitical issues, and economic alliance, why not? I believe in that.
What was that, sorry? 10 minutes. 10 minutes, perfect, cool. So we have 10 minutes left. Yeah, I was about to ask you. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yes, to go. Got it. So then the last two, we'll keep the questions very short because I know you got an important call. There's a comment you made to Donald Trump Jr. where you said, talking about US aid interference in Serbia, you said that you have information that he'll be very surprised, that will be very helpful for Donald Trump, and that the same thing could happen to him again. You're talking about President Trump. And the NGOs can use the same sources as they did in Serbia, from what I understood from your comments. Can you elaborate more on that comment you've made?
I believe that there is an ongoing investigation in this country, and I cannot reveal some facts because to tell you the truth, I don't know everything. But what I heard is going to be a lot of issues regarding money laundering and everything else. Of course, there were good things they were doing, but there were very bad things they were doing as well. And now it's time to scrutinize it and to expose it to the world. And I think that it'll be good for the other nations, for the other people to see how they were creating a hostile political network against the government they didn't like, what kind of tricks, what kind of methods they were using, how they were producing cash when they didn't have legal ways and legal means to do so, and everything else. And I think that would be very useful. And if they finish that investigation, that would be a part of my new book about color revolution as well.